All right, everybody. I am excited. We're live. We got a ton of people cycling into the room. So welcome, welcome. We are so excited to bring this content to you. We're going to be talking about Azure Government Virtual Machines. What are the differences between Microsoft 365 virtual machines and Azure virtual machines? Now, this one, I got to tell you, there's so much misinformation out there that I'm very excited to help clarify this because there is nothing simple about Microsoft licensing. Sorry, guys, there just isn't. It is about as clear as a lead kite. I almost don't even understand how Microsoft hasn't fixed this problem by now. But of course, they had to do it. They created two different ways to license virtual machines. So I'll walk through with you exactly what that is. Next, we're going to learn about, we're going to learn and decide which kind of virtual machines might be right for my organization. So we're going to talk about helping you make that decision and, what makes sense in terms of a virtual machine. Should we license it through Microsoft 365 or should we license it through Azure itself, which is the overarching environment that Microsoft and Office 365 exist in? Should we license it as a pay-as-you-go type of model? We'll talk about advantages and disadvantages there. Next, I'll help you understand scaling and efficiency with Azure Government Virtual Machines. Maybe one of my favorite parts when it comes to dealing with virtual machines, and particularly Azure, is the idea and the concept that it's instantly scalable. So unlike infrastructure at your office where you would have to buy more servers and you have to have kind of a big capital expenditure, you can get started using virtual machines right now and you can scale them instantaneously. So if I needed 100 new machines tomorrow, I can do that. And I can use them for a week, pay for what I used, and then I can spin them right back down, which is so cool. So cool. There is no other way to do this. And particularly, there's no other way if you have to be compliant with these standards that you can really do this in quite as effective of a manner. And also with just the general guarantee that, look, it's already in the Azure government environment. It's okay. The government already recognizes this. Next, we're going to talk about how to get compliant quickly, even when what you have now is hopeless. And I know, especially if you're an IT director, maybe you're a CEO, you're looking at what you got going on and you're like, Mike, our situation's hopeless. I got 150 machines. Maybe I got one machine. I don't get it. I don't have the technical skill to get this pulled off. Our environment has issues related to how we can get compliant. Maybe it's a cost issue. Maybe it's a hardware issue. You got older hardware. Whatever it is, the question is, how do you get compliant quickly using Azure Government Virtual Machines if you feel like your situation is hopeless? And we can definitely help you do that. It's really cool. Next, what is it really like working in a virtual machine? We're going to have a little demo. Yes, we're going to actually do a quick demo of a virtual machine, which I think is so cool. By the way, fair warning, I have not spun up the virtual machine in advance. This is not going to be some kind of a whiz-bang kind of demo where everything's already up and running. You'll see how long does it take to actually log into the machine? What is it like when it comes up? And we're going to do our very best to give you a realistic view of what a virtual machine looks like. Next, understanding the cost. Okay, this is the big one. So again, if you're looking at this and you're going, man, I'm really skeptical, this sounds really expensive, I'm going to help you to give you sort of a rough order of magnitude on cost. Is it going to be accurate? No. It's going to be a way for us to just generally get across the concept of how much this costs for two reasons. Number one, so much noise in the marketplace. I know you hear me say it all the time, but it's so true. There are hundreds and thousands of vendors out there pitching IT solutions. It can be very, very confusing to understand what the cost is going to be, what kind of investment am I really looking at, and try to get to a point where this makes sense for me. So I'm going to do my very best to try to overgeneralize and give you some kind of a ballpark so that you can have a clue about how much it costs. The great news about on-call is, I got to tell you, it took us 3 years to figure out how in the world can we take this thing, this Azure Virtual Government Machine thing, and actually make it reasonable to quote, reasonable to get across to you, fast spin up time, and get you guys what you need. And also, how can we quickly convey costs? Because I'll tell you, if you look at the way a lot of companies quote this, what they will do is, they'll take weeks to sit there and take you through an architectural design process. We have designed an incredibly streamlined process that cuts out all the middle garbage, cuts out all the engineering stuff. I mean, we do some engineering, but we do it quickly, and we've built some tools on our end to really make it fast to quote this. I'll tell you, we turn around quotes for Azure Virtual Machine entire environments in under a day. I don't know another vendor that's doing that. And again, it's ultimately at the end of the day, it's for you guys. It's what you've asked for. It's what you want. And it gives you the confidence to realize this doesn't have to be that complicated. It just doesn't, right? So that's another thing we'll do is in understanding the cost, I'll debunk the myth that this has to be complicated. It just doesn't have to be. Next, I'll give some final thoughts. I'll take you through some next steps. And I'll tell you, hey, look, if after this webinar, you're like, man, Mike, this is really interesting. I would like to see what this looks like in my company. I'd love to give you, what we try to give everybody usually, which is a quick questionnaire, and then you can get a quote, and it's all really, really streamlined. I will say that we like to meet with every client so that we can truly understand your needs, so that we can really dive into what you've got going on and create an environment that's customized to you. Why is that? Well, I'll give you a few examples. Number one is we can create incredible efficiencies of scale with Azure Government Virtual Machines. Okay. What that means is I can take one virtual machine and we can create a compliant environment with that virtual machine. Everybody gets their own session, and you can run 6 to 10 users per machine. So you only pay the cost of one good sized virtual machine, and then you can run 6 to 10 users simultaneously on it. Now, that's being cost effective. And again, it just depends on what applications you're running. It depends on all of the things you're doing with the machine. So again, I'd love to put out there a quoting tool like we have for some of our other things. I'd love to do this as much as I possibly could pre-done, but after 3 years of trying to figure out how can we make this even simpler, the reality is the best result is going to come from a quick one-on-one meeting with us. Let's get to understand exactly what you have going on. Frankly, if you're not even compliant, let's get you through the gap analysis and solution design process so that we can really thoroughly vet if this is right for you. There are more cost-effective ways to get compliant depending upon what you have in place. If your compliance or if your environment is already 90% of the way there, getting the other 10% to achieve compliance might be less expensive. But in some cases, it's not. And in many cases, this is a way more logical sort of approach because it's so air-gapped, it's so guaranteed, if you will, and it just makes sense. And it's scalable. For all those reasons, it makes a lot of sense. So again, before we ever put people into this environment, I will share with you, we do like to meet with you. We like to understand your needs. Again, I just consider it making sure that we're not committing malpractice. You guys know, we're not like other companies. We're not here to sit there and sort of ream the last little penny of profit out of every client that we work with. That's not what we're all about. We're a volume-based approach. We work with so many defense contractors. We operate on volume. And so that translates into a better service experience for you guys. We have one of the largest consulting teams in the world when it comes to defense and compliance and information security. And then it also works because you guys get a customized solution. And this is going to be an environment that you base your work out of. And so I think it's important to take that level of time to tailor it and make it your own. Here's the best part. We do all of that architecting for free. Don't charge you a penny. Literally, when you work with us, we will design the whole solution. Okay, we'll tell you everything. We'll give you the quote. Okay, it's yours. It's free. All right. That's our permission to play. That's our permission to talk with you. And again, we consider it to be a win-win. Honestly, I'll tell you, my big thing is if I can give you a great solution at a fair price, I have had very few people say no. And in that regard, the last thing I really need to do is charge you to understand what it is we're even proposing. Really, really silly. By the way, that is maybe one of the biggest barriers to entry into a decent Azure government virtual machine environment is most other companies, you can definitely expect to pay consultative fees just to design the architecture around how this thing gets set up. Again, we do this often enough that we know what it looks like. We know what you need, and we're doing it every day. Literally, we have a whole board full of projects going on right now to stand up Azure Virtual Machines, to stand up Office 365 GCC High. This is all we do, you guys. So again, no need to charge you for that kind of stuff. So if you want to learn more about it, to see if it's right for you or your organization, I'll give some final thoughts at the end here. I'll tell you exactly how to get in touch with us. And in the meanwhile, let's get on to providing some really awesome value.